What's up, everybody? It's Dustin, Berserker Bear, another edition of Bushwhacking Tartaria. I have kind of an extensive one for you today, kind of a history of Buffalo in pictures, articles, a couple articles, a few articles, cityscapes, industry, canals, waterways, waterworks, earthworks, everything like that, old pictures. We're going to go through pretty much it all. Give you a little preview here. We have old maps. We'll reference like normal. Star forts. And we'll go over some old pictures, articles, and I will point out some anomalies along the way. So let's get right into it. I'm going to read off of a script, and I'll let some pictures play, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do, narrate through what's going on. So as this plays, I will tell you effectively what we're going to do. So again, it's a history of Buffalo and pictures, articles, literature, cityscapes, canals, waterways, star forts. Pretty extensive, so I hope you like it, and let's get right into it. Here goes some pictures to get you started and primed up, and I will read what I have for you. This is kind of an interesting, hope that's not too confusing for you, but I pulled this off of a map I will show you, and it's just interesting. This is Toronto up here, which is a much bigger city by far than Buffalo right now, but look at the difference. So at the turn of the century, last century, Buffalo was certainly a very much more hustle and bustle city than it is now, and the underlying tone here is going to be we'll watch a couple clips of some videos. Also, I'm going to show you that their titles are Buffalo is the most well-designed city in the world. So we got that going for us, which is nice. So here we go. These are the pictures, and I'll start a slideshow for you, and it'll just play. I will show the books that I pulled these pictures from afterwards, after I read this off. So if it sounds like I'm reading, it's because I am, but it's because there's so much to get to. That's the best way for me to deliver this all to you. So this is going to play through as a slideshow. I'll go over these pictures in more detail later and thread it all together, okay, as I read this off. So let's go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is present a history of Buffalo in mainstream articles, sources, usually like Infogalactic or Wikipedia, and pictures like cityscapes, architecture, churches, railroads, and railroad layouts, canals, waterworks, earthworks, industry, and obviously star forts. Like I said, it's my belief that Buffalo, when taking into account the things I just mentioned and those topics, along with like the radial Baroque street design that we'll go over. Those are the clips that I have that discuss the radial Baroque street style grid layout. I think that it lends to Buffalo being a standalone city in the Northeast. Not only from the radial street design that's very similar to Washington, D.C., there's Riverside Park there, but it also is the only city in the Northeast, and this is going to be underlined again in one of the clips that I show, that I'm going to show, and I'll put all this in the description below. It's the only city amongst, like, you'd say, Boston, Philadelphia, Chicago, New York City, that has a sunset over the water, Lake Erie. And I think that that's extremely important. especially incorporating the radial street pattern design. So that's one of my main points that I'm going to say. Look, there you go. Here's an interesting set of pictures. Keep an eye on the X marks the spot. Okay. So I'm going to continue reading. The aforementioned topics, which is waterworks, earthworks, star forts, obviously, and I think it's a standalone city amongst the ones that I just mentioned. New York City, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, because it is the only city that has. I never found this out until I did this research. Actually, that it's the only city amongst those that has a sunset over Lake Erie, over the water, and that's for sure. Again, you'll see it in one of the clips. So it has a sunset over the water, Lake Erie, and I think that it was I'm going to posit and I'm going to try to make the argument that it is a old world mega hub. You know, the grand empire that we talk about that spans the realm that we posit. You know, we refer to it as Tartaria, but I think actually that this might be a Moorish. This might have been the Moorish sector of that Grand Tartary, or the Rus Empire, like Philip calls it, in which I agree. Tartary was just the sector in Siberia. You had the Asian sector, Mongols, the Nords, and I've done this before, the Ottoman Empire. So, yeah, that's what I think, and I've talked to my buddy, Mr. Brees, about that, and he's actually the one that seeded that idea in my head that, maybe this is an interesting picture right here. Squaw Island. That's right near my house, and this is where Black Rock gets Black Rock's name. But Mr. Brees had actually initially said that idea that, hey, dude, I think you're sitting on top of an old Tartarian mega hub, and that definitely seems to be the case. So that's what we're gonna show here. Let's see if I can get out of here. So yeah, with the radial street pattern design and sunset over the water, being the only city in the northeast of like the Rust Belt cities, you'd say, of the old Industrial Revolution here in America. And we're going to see some really cool pictures about that. It's unbelievably significant in my opinion, very significant in my opinion, that Buffalo has, again, both the pattern of the street grid layout, Baroque system, radial, and that sunset over the water. So, yeah, mega hub, Tartaria Empire. Okay, so what we're going to do now is get into, we'll look through these pictures. I told you we're going to have some clips. Now, these clips are going to underline the points that I just talked about effectively. Let's go. Let's see them. There you go. Buffalo, America's best designed city. Now, I'm going to let this play. Maybe I will stop and pause it to underline some points, as I say, and hopefully I don't get I shared these in my community tab to prime this video up, so should be all set. Here we go. Buffalo, the best designed city in the world. So we start this from right here.
Well, one of the great things that Lake Erie gives us is this oceanic view, over 200 miles of water to the west. It's just spectacular to sit out there and watch the sunset over the water, and that's something no one else in the eastern U.S. has, because all our other cities, Boston, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, they don't have sunsets over the water. We do.
Holler at Buffalo and the Buffalo Bills.
The city of Buffalo is surrounded by water. We have Lake Erie to our west, Niagara Falls to the north, the Buffalo River meandering to the south.
To the east, we have nothing but farmland. And I think that if these were all, the railroads were, or a portion of the railroads were canals, they fed that farmland.
The settlement patterns in our community came up from the water.
Well, Buffalo is one of the few cities that has a truly Baroque street system.
In 1804, Joseph Ellicott came to town.
Joseph Ellicott was the brother of Andrew Ellicott, who was on Pierre L'Enfant's.
Now, that's important. Remember the date that gentleman said that Joseph Ellicott came to Buffalo, and the Baroque street pattern.
Joseph Ellicott came to town.
Joseph Ellicott was the brother that has a truly Baroque street system.
In 1804, Joseph Ellicott came to
He says 1804.
town.
Joseph Ellicott was the brother of Andrew Ellicott, who was on Pierre L'Enfant's team to design Washington, D.C.
And a lot of elements of the plan of Washington, D.C. are visible in Buffalo. A grid overlaid by a radial system of streets.
The radial and grid street system gave us an incredibly elegant framework for developing our city.
One of the really terrific things about the railroads is the way they shaped the view. So when you're
Now we have the best planned city in the world, Olmsted, Vox, and the Buffalo Park system. I believe Buffalo is also known for it being the first park system in the world, and that's attributed to Olmsted and this guy Vox. Not so much going to focus on the park system, though it is very important. This is more so for the actual layout grid system of the city, and the fact that it's very important. Obviously, you can see with the title.
In the years after the Civil War, Buffalo was the center of America, the place where the Erie Canal ended, linking east and west.
Look familiar?
It was among the most productive and wealthy industrial cities in the nation. But it would soon be known for something entirely different. The first park system in America. Buffalo would change forever, the way cities are planned and scenery preserved.
Well, when Olmsted was invited to come in 1868, Buffalo was really a booming city. Its industry was flourishing, its transportation was flourishing. It was also the center of a growing agricultural region.
2 clips from this one. Bear with me.
The city had very good bones.
The original city plan of Buffalo was laid out in 1804.
It doesn't look like 1804. I have that original, or we're going to see this picture, and it does say 1804, but in this video, it looks like 1834. So that's anomaly number 1.
By Joseph Ellicott, a surveyor who worked in Washington with Pierre L'Enfant. He took the idea of a radiating city plan. Olmsted thought this was a really brilliant idea. It was a very unusual plan for an American city.
On the tour, Olmsted was taken to 3 sites local citizens thought suitable for Buffalo's version of Central Park. But within a week, Olmsted let Buffalo know that his plan would not be Central Park transplanted upstate. It would be something much more ambitious.
He comes up with the idea.
That's probably because what I'm going to posit is that it was already laid out. Maybe not as far as the fashion that he designed it, but it couldn't be laid out like Central Park because I think that these grid patterns were here already.
That this city would be better served with 3 parks in different parts of town.
3 unique sites, 3 unique designs. To the west, along the Niagara River, Olmsted and Vox created the front, with a terrace for viewing the scenic Niagara. On the east side, they placed a parade, with grounds for marching and for active sports. To the north, the park eventually Delaware would be a pastoral landscape, a country place within the city.
Country place within the city. That's now Delaware Park. Beautiful park. And that's where the Albright Knox Art Gallery is, as well as the Buffalo Historic Museum. A contributor on our MeWe website did a really good example of how they kind of hide history with that. Malachi Crunch suggests you go check out us on MeWe. I'll link it in our description. So Delaware Park, there we go. And one more small clip that has to do with the actual history of radial street patterns. More of a broader type look at it.
Style of city is the radial grid, which is strictly geometric, with streets radiating out from important buildings, monuments, churches, palaces, and state buildings. A very good example of a radial grid is Washington, D.C., or New Delhi in India, or La Plata, the capital of Argentina's Buenos Aires province. And it's a city near the city of Buenos Aires. Some point to Paris, and it does have aspects of a radial grid city, with wide boulevards carved out in the 19th century that connect many of the powerful monuments in that city, like the Champs-Élysées that links the Louvre to the Arc de Triomphe. But it does so across what is essentially an organic fabric to the city. There are no countries or continents that are exemplified by the radial grid, but they do exist in many countries and on several continents.
Okay, so there you go. It's a very important type of street pattern here, and we have it in Buffalo. And actually, let's go and look at the actual definition and read that. So, radial grid. The radial. This is very important, and I'm going to expand on this and lay down. It's going to underline a point that I made previously. The radial grid is a gridiron plan, you could look that up, on steroids. Okay, it is strictly geometric, regardless of existing topography, and in some cases changes the topography to better match the geometry, meaning it will actually terraform the land to make it actually stay geometric and symmetric. That hints at terraforming. Effectively, what I've been saying, that this city looks like it's been terraformed. Could be mud flood. Terraforming could be digging mud flood out. We don't know, but in the actual definition of the radial street pattern, it says that in certain cases that the topography itself, which is the landscape, is changed to match geometry. And now Buffalo was said to have, they showed that street pattern made in 1805, and they're making such a big deal about it. But there's no, I can't find any proper pictures of it or even detail of it, to be honest with you. So if the grid, I'm going to read that again. The radial gridiron is gridiron plan on steroids, strictly geometric, regardless of existing topography, and in some cases changes the topography to better match the geometry. If the gridiron represents power, the radial grid represents power without subtlety. Streets radiate from churches, palaces, state buildings, and other emblems of authority. The radial grid takes much more skill to design and implement than the standard grid, and as such is much more rare. It is often seen in palatial estates of Europe, at Versailles and Carouge, and in capitals both democratic, colonial, as in Washington, D.C. and New Delhi. Doesn't even mention Buffalo. Rarely implementable on a scale of an entire city, many cities have sections with radial grids. Paris, an organic city, had parts of it wholly demolished in the 19th century to be redeveloped in grand radial style. Though it retains the overall organic pattern, grand boulevards such as Champs-Élysées link powerful monuments such as Tuileries and the Arc de Triomphe across organic fabric, just like that gentleman was saying. So that's the definition of a radial street pattern, and as it shows in that video, in 1805, we have a radial street pattern already laid out in Buffalo. Allegedly, Ellicott and his brothers designed it as they did Washington, D.C., as I guess they did cities all across America. Could be a construct, but what I'm telling you is there's these old maps that I found. This map was a map 1771 in this area of Buffalo. There's nothing there. And this is a map, the William Tryon Esquire map. This is another one that was given to me by Malachi Crunch, I believe. Now, just so you have a date reference, 1771, there's nothing over here in Buffalo, or at least there's not anything mapped. Okay? Keep that in mind, because now we have this map, which is dated 1804, I believe, because Buffalo before was called New Amsterdam. Okay? You have a star fort in Fort Erie. I'm going to get into that. But nothing really over here. So there's no radial pattern there. But then all of a sudden in 1805, when it went from New Amsterdam to the village of Buffalo, boom, you have a radial pattern. I also want to show you this. These are the books that I'm pulling from. Look at where I am. Internet Archive. This is where I go to find old, like, microfiche type articles. Now, I have these cityscape pictures that I want to show to you that I pulled from. Not those ones. Although we will look at them. Bear with me. Okay, here we go. Now, this is going to be like a cross section of time. In these, we have one from 1825, 1850, and it's a lower angle. Notice 1888, and I have a better one of that. Okay, that's 1888, fully built out. Now this picture, I forget where I got it from, but it's dated because the Peace Bridge is in there. You have the International Bridge here, which is older. That was built late 1800s. Off the top of my head, I think the late 1880s. The Peace Bridge was built or opened for business, it says, in 1837, or excuse me, 1937. We can check that out, actually. There goes that photo. Just for quick reference, because we want to date that photo. It's going to be kind of a long video here, so. Peace. Real quick, it says opened 1927. Okay, so that dates that photo at least 1927, and notice they kind of try to hide that crib intake that we know is there, that I've addressed on previous videos. And we're going to see pictures of them making all this stuff. I have all that. And you know what? Let's go back to what we're doing here. So 1825, 1850, low angle, 1888, and then at least 1927. And I'm not sure if this is a picture or a rendering, but You can also see that the star shape is lost. If you compare it against, well, let's pull up these maps. Now it'll take a minute for this to load, but this is an 1880 map rendering of Buffalo. And you can get these at the Library of Congress. If they load up, they are going through them, and you can see the star shape right there. And I think that they were dismantling them. And maybe we'll get into the star forts right now. But this will take a second to load in. But when you zoom in, you can begin to see how I think they covered it up with the industry. We're going to go through the industry. There's some amazing pictures of industry all over the city. Huge picturesque landscapes of industry that just took up massive city blocks. It's unbelievable. So when you zoom in, I think that they hid a lot of the features of these stars with these buildings to, like John Levi said, you're quarrying them effectively. There goes right there. We'll check this out. Now you look at this picture and it's not really there. You lose it, but the piers are there. The harbor's there. Now here's the interesting picture, 1825. Buffalo Harbor. Like, what's going on here? I mean, you have houses. Looks like this dude's saying, yeah, what's going on over there? It's the same with this guy. It looks like there's a mud flood, and it looks like there's buildings on top of it. Or at least it looks like a hill. But it almost looks like in clouds. But then you have a path. And that's 1825. And by 1927, at least because the Peace Bridge is there, it's looking like this. Railroad all built out. Now we wanted to do the Star Fort. This is extremely interesting here. Show you guys. Let's just go right here. Now we're at Fort Erie is right across Niagara River from Buffalo. See that? Star Fort. Now that's very important because what I've shown before, War of 1812, so that dates this picture. Now notice earthwork. X marks the spot. They're saying that there's two star forts. One here that we could see, and one here in Buffalo. 1812. Also showing earthwork. And that earthwork is where I've been before. So the star fort would have been here that they hid, as it shows in that 1812. And the earthwork right here, of course, is the pumping station that I've done before. I've been there, and was right here taking pictures on Porter, and I did a video with a couple videos back of that. So you got confirmed that that's an earthwork. Confirmed that we have a star fort here in Fort Erie that you can go and actually see. but you don't hear anything about it, and obviously you can't see it really in the landscape anymore. So it's kind of proof positive as to how they can hide them. Dismantle, hide. Very, very interesting. And I wanted to get back at these low angle. Yeah, Star Forts. They're also up at Old Fort Niagara. That's the lower section of where the Niagara River empties into Lake Ontario. There's old Star Forts on both sides up there too. Of course, I understand that's strategic for forts, ramifications, and stuff like that. Look at this. This is here you go. So this would be where Niagara River empties into Lake Ontario, like I was just saying. This is the whole expanse from southern tip of Niagara River all the way up to where we are. It's pretty cool. And that would be Old Fort Niagara. You can see my cursor on the American side. And there is an old fort on the Canadian side. That's some gravy. Check that out. And this is dated 1913. And notice how, because I posited that the Peace Bridge construction was only the steel truss on top of the piers. And notice how in a 1913 picture, before they say that the Peace Bridge was constructed, it's this is covered up. It's kind of fitting how they do it, because maybe the truss wasn't there. I don't think that the steel truss was there, but I think that the concrete piers were there, and we may see evidence of how they did that coming up, because I have pictures. Here goes a good idea of the radial, or at least how it looked turn of last century. This is from south looking up, obviously towards Buffalo. Look at the build out up there. That would be Pier, Bird Island Pier. Just fascinating to look at all these old pictures. Now this is the title here is the Niagara River and the vicinity at Black Rock as it was prior to the War of 1812. So there's something right here in the river, and I'm not necessarily sure what that would be. There's a Black Rock that got blown up essentially at the War of 1812. I believe here's Riverside Park, a couple blocks away from where I'm at right now. Yeah, cityscapes are very cool to look at. Now, the initial railroad, I think, was first started in, 1813. Don't quote me on that. We're gonna read the article, actually. But look at the extensive beltway, New York, Delaware, Rochester. Some of these are railways. Some of them, I think, are trolley lines. And I think some of them were all canals before. Again, like you could see how it would come from the river. And all out here right now is what I was referring to as it's all farmland, effectively. And, you know, if this water was feeding that farmland, they flipped it and used it for mechanized transportation as opposed to, because you could have used the canals for transportation as well as feeding irrigation, in my opinion. So radial street patterns. I wanted to look at the low cityscape. Yeah, the mud flood possible in 1825 or whatever that looks like. buildings on top of a hill. And maybe this spire right here, maybe that was buried. It's quite possible. Also in this old 1825 picture. Yeah, I don't understand why, a question that I had in my outline here. 1850 has a low angle, and you can't really orient where you are. And look at this building, you know, what's going on here. Were they still in the process of digging out what we've seen in that other photo? Because you can't really get yourself an orientation of where you are in this one. Also, 1825, if you pay attention, I think, you know, in the foreground you have these box buildings, and even these look mud flooded, okay, all over. The trees in the background here, is that flow? You know, and you have the pier out here. I was positing that these are steeples, and they're just trying to smear it out. All these little things along the row. Like they're all these things that are there still. There goes the pier. Is it possible? Could it be that these were all here? Not all the box ones, but the steeple ones. Because that's what it looks like. Could be what these are. I mean, we have what looks like mud all over the place. And they could have been digging. I'm going to show pictures of the industry and the machines that they had at the turn of the last century to be able to possibly do that stuff. We're going to get into that right now. Showed that. Earthworks in the pumping station, I showed that. Oh, we got some other pictures to go over. Pardon me. Now, this is a very interesting one here. The Statler Hotel is advertised in this picture. And I wonder if you guys notice anything. The Statler's still here in Buffalo. Actually, the one of the ghost teams came through here. Paranormal investigators or paranormal, I forget. And they stayed overnight in the one here in Buffalo. But you got, okay, Cleveland, Buff. And look at Detroit. Something look odd to you? They're saying Detroit is a... They're, okay. I'm not sure if you're seeing what I'm seeing here, but... they're not showing that whole island. It looks like they're trying to say that, I know this might be a little bit cut off here, or why? These are old postcards and stamps. Why is there no island in front? Almost like they're depicting Detroit as being on the shore line of Lake Erie. Meanwhile, it's like tucked in behind the peninsula here. I don't know how to explain it. I came across that and thought it was an anomaly. Figured I'd put it in here. Extremely, extremely curious. Another anomaly. So we had this possible mud flood in these cityscapes. We have this anomaly of the Statler advertisement postcard of a shoreline Detroit, Lake Erie. Going through pictures, trying to find old cityscapes of Buffalo. 65th Regiment Armory anomaly. One picture has no tower on it, and another picture has a ginormous tower on it. How to explain that, I have no idea. And there's a couple like this. I'll put, again, this is either it's postcards and stamps, and there's colorized photos of all the ones I'm going to show you in my because I'm going to read a history of Buffalo. We're going to go through that also, and we're going to show how Wikipedia likes to smear type of things. We're going to look at all the pictures here, guys. Look at that. What's going on there? It looks like megalithic block to me. They're saying that's Erie Canal. These are the pictures that I have. We're going to go through all this. So, get your popcorn. We still have a lot more to go. This is just a preview. Now, keep in mind, 1771 is saying there's nothing in this area. We have a map of 1804 that's calling this area New Amsterdam. There is no indication of a star fort on the American side. Okay. And by 1805, the village of Buffalo, formerly New Amsterdam, has a built-out radial street pattern that can change topography to make sure that it's radial, geometric, symmetric. Blows my mind. So all of a sudden it kind of just appears, but then in comes Joseph Ellicott, and they in those little snippets that I showed you, those videos, how important he was, but there's no indication or literature on the actual construction of it, which is extremely interesting to me. So now what we're going to do is go through the history. I'll read a brief history of the early Buffalo. We have Infogalactic. We have a History of Buffalo website. This will all be in the description. And we have Infogalactic Wikipedia. And while I do that, we're going to play some pictures for you. And if I could find all of them. We'll start out with this, and what I will do is read these articles off. Some of them are duplicates and most of them aren't. And then we're going to go through the actual books in more detail because the industry is amazing. So we're going to put it together with the literature against the pictures and picturescapes, or picture. What's the word I'm looking for? Cityscapes. Excuse me. And there's still more anomalies. Now, actually, one thing I do want to show you is how the excuse me, how certain things can be smeared. I forgot to show this to you guys prior. Now, I have this book. This is from my book. I took a picture of this book. This is a snippet of my book. I have it right here. Excuse me, my phone. Okay. Now, notice how there's a very distinct wall right there. Okay. Now, in the article that I'm going to read from Wikipedia, this picture is in Wikipedia that you're looking at right now. Now, do you notice the difference? Now, number one, the pictures, there's certain characteristics of the picture itself that are different. And what I noticed is you don't see that wall, that very distinct wall right here. It's kind of smeared out. If nothing else, I'm just showing that it's censored, because I have the book, and the book shows a very distinct, what looks to be maybe a canal wall. And why would it be smeared out? Because in here it looks like it's just a bank that goes right into the water. Why are they trying to show that that wall is not there in the Wikipedia? That's an anomaly. A smearing, yes. Anomaly, yes. Anomaly of Detroit being on the shore, definitely. Anomaly of the 64th Regiment or 65th Regiment having a tower in one picture and not in another, definitely an anomaly. Absolutely. So, all right, let's get into the early history of Buffalo while you look at some awesome pictures. Okay, so early history of Buffalo. Prior to the Iroquois occupation of the region was settled by the neutral nation. Later, the Senecas of the Iroquois Confederacy conquered the Neutrals and their territory, circa 1651. In 1804, Joseph Ellicott, a principal agent of the Holland Land Company, designed a radial street grid system. Oh, he designed it? Okay, we just seen a video that references that it was being used in Europe. He designed a radial street system. Well, I could see he designed one for Buffalo. Okay. That branches out from downtown like bicycle spokes. Although Ellicott named the settlement New Amsterdam, the name did not catch on. During the War of 1812, on December 30th, 1813, Buffalo was burned by British forces. I have a picture of that. At least a black rock being burned. On October 26, 1825, the Erie Canal was completed, with Buffalo a port of call for settlers heading westward. Western New York. At the time, the population was about 2,400. The Erie Canal brought about a surge in population and commerce, which led to Buffalo incorporated as a city in 1832. In 1845, construction began on the Macedonia Baptist Church. Oh, okay, that's a good... There we go. An important meeting place for abolitionist movement. Buffalo was a terminus point of the Underground Railroad, with many fugitive slaves crossing the Niagara to Fort Erie, Ontario, in search of freedom, over into Canada. During the Fort Erie again, where that Star Fort is. During the 1840s, Buffalo's port continued to develop. Sure did. Continued to develop away from a former Star Fort. Both passenger and commercial traffic expanded, with some 93,000 passengers heading west, of course, from the port of Buffalo. Grain and commercial goods shipments led to repeated expansion of the harbor. Steam-powered grain elevator was constructed by local merchant Joseph Dart and engineer Robert Dunbar. Dart's elevator enabled faster unloading of lake freighters, along with the transshipment of grain in bulk from barges, canal boats, and rail cars. By 1850, the city's population was 81,000. So it experienced a boom. And there was a fire, obviously. And then that's the early history per Infogalactic. Early history. Wikipedia says that the inhabitants of New York State are believed to have been nomadic Paleo-Indian. Oh, that's that prehistory. Let's go to founding of Erie Canal and railroads. The first white settlers along the creek, now this is from Wikipedia, where that picture was smudged. Look at what we have here. That's like steampunk for sure. Sholkop Dam, I've done. Niagara Falls. Okay, the first white settlers along the creek were prisoners captured during the Revolutionary War. The first resident and landowner of Buffalo with a permanent presence was Captain William Johnston, a white Iroquois interpreter who had been in the area since the days after the Revolutionary War, and who the Senecas granted creekside land as a gift of appreciation. His house stood at present-day Washington and Seneca Streets. Former enslaved man Joseph Black Joe Hedges and Cornelius Winnie, a Dutch trader from Albany, who arrived in 1789, were early settlers along the mouth of the Buffalo Creek. This is quite extensive. I didn't realize it was that long. So you got the general gist of it. What I want to tell you is effectively the history that Joseph Ellicott designed that street pattern, and all of a sudden it seems to just appear in 1805 after it was named from New Amsterdam to the village of Buffalo. And it just seems a little bit suspect that there's patterns like that in Europe, but they're saying that he designed it, and I understand maybe he designed it for Buffalo in the style of Washington. But again, we've addressed before in my video with Cam and Michelle that we think that their tactic is, or one of their alleged tactics is to say that something was built in the style of something because it was already there. Actually, only because it's built in the style of, it was actually built by the same people. Now, I have this book. This is Buffalo's waterfront book. I took pictures of it and placed it in here. This is that canal picture that we compared it against the Wikipedia one. It says the port of Buffalo began at the mouth of a sluggish creek. This engraving of a military activity during the War of 1812 depicts at lower left the intersection of Little Buffalo Creek with Buffalo Creek, which then emptied into Lake Erie on the lower right. With Erie Canal opened up in 1825, with Buffalo at its western terminus, traffic flowed along its route. Travelers and cargoers transferred here between canal boats and lake ships. And again, it looks like there's a wall here, so we'll show pictures. Look at this industry here. Now I wanted to show, you know what, let's go look at these books also. A lot of the pictures that I have in this book are also in these Buffalo Industrial Exhibition books that are super interesting. And we're going to go through the dates on these and go through each one of those, because there's some fabulous industry pictures in them, as well as cityscapes, all that. Similar to this. I wanted to look at these because it says this is Squaw Island, that's right near me. We've been there many a times before on my Google Earth. It's now Unity Island. Okay. I'm not sure what I'm looking at here. It looks like Lego building blocks again, like, and oh, look what we have here. UAP, a ladder. There's no construction photos of these being placed. Look at, you can see the scale. I mean, these are blocks, are they not? Massive blocks. Waterfront communities were fragile. Land available for small cottagers trying to eke out a living on the water was undesirable. In 1844, a seiche happened. That's kind of like a wave effect. I have no idea. Never even heard of that before until I seen this. It wiped out much of the early community. 1866 storms destroyed the unsubstantial dwellings. Interesting. Kind of sounds like maybe a small reset. This happened again in October 1886 when winds gusted to 63 miles an hour. Even normal weather patterns expanded their initial fury on these plucky settlements. Nevertheless, the residents rebuilt when necessary. Now, this is a little indicative of what Philip Druzinin and I talked about and how they would use sludge possibly as backfill. And that would look like possible mud flood. There go these blocks again, guys. The canal structures of the 19th century were built largely of stone and wood. This picture shows a ship lock that accommodated traffic between Black Rock Harbor, opposite the north end of Squaw Island, and Niagara River. Visible are the large blocks of stone, masonry set in hydraulic cement that form the walls of the lock chamber, as well as the wooden balance beams. Here we go. Used for opening and closing the gates. The rather ramshackle building, of course, yeah, it's a ramshackle building. In the background is the Erie Flour Mill, one of the several in the vicinity that once operated by water power. Millers used the difference between the water level of the Erie Canal and the Black Rock Harbor to drive their machinery. The Erie Flour Mill was located between Amherst Street and the railway line International Bridge. So that would be right around here. Amherst Street is right here. Oh, it's Austin. Where is Amherst? There it is. Yep, Amherst right here. There's Amherst Street, and there is the International Bridge. So that's where we're looking at right there. And yeah, I mean, this looks like fitted stone, and they just placed it, and you got stuff like this. It's hard to buy that. I think what we're saying here, Matt from Quantum of Conscious, my man, is that we found this stuff. I mean, you got stuff growing. Give me a break. How long does it take for shrubs to grow in between? A crack right here. If this is any idea how thick they are, and there's no pictures of them being placed at all. This is how they build cofferdams. Black rock. Huge machinery, guys, for sure, but I don't think they could do this in the Niagara River. Cofferdam. In this photograph, the outline of the cofferdam is taking shape. Pumps are at work to control the water seeping in to the construction area. The pumps had a daily capacity of 50 million gallons and lifts 5 to 45 feet. The contractor for the lock was MacArthur Bros. Company of New York City. The project forced pleasure boat owners and recreational clubs to relocate, of course. Visible at the right and then in the docks, Buffalo Smelting Works over here. Industry. These are the Black Rock locks, I believe. Fished there many a time. Right there. Okay. And I can actually see those blocks now that I think about it when I fish. Right there. When the Black Rock ship lock opened for for business in 1914. Open for business, not no kind of construction. I mean, you see these pictures, but where are the pictures? They're dumping rocks here, but and driving that stuff into the mud for the caissons, but I don't see them placing any of these rocks. They might be holding them back here. It just seems like they were actually digging it all out, because then it just appears to be there. You guys can read all this stuff and pause it. There's the Buffalo Lighthouse in the harbor. Yeah, this is a short one. This is hilarious, though. Look, they have to have a ramp to come down in here. And there go the blocks again. Okay. Looks like. We got a ladder. I mean, look at all that. Here's what they say. In 1896, New York embarked on its final effort to improve the capacity of the Erie Canal. The strategy involved deepening the canal prism by excavating the bottom or raising the banks. Okay. The method of increasing the cross-section of the waterway and the size of the canal boats had been elected over an alternative that recommended increasing the speed of existing vessels. Because they were probably just digging all this stuff out. And that's the best excuse that they had to come up with. Look at this. So there's all this. Look at that wall. That looks like a wall in South America. And there's nothing about it being placed. An 1896 program to deepen the canal fizzled out in 2 years. Oh, okay. Emphasis shifted to planning for a new barge canal capable of accommodating larger boats. Earlier in the decade, however, portions of the canal between the Erie Basin and Black Rock had been enlarged by subiquitous rock excavation. Not familiar with that term. Canal reconstruction during this period proceeded in conjunction with attempts to mitigate municipal sewerage discharges in the waterway. Of course, because they didn't know what to do with the sewers, because we found all this stuff, I believe. There go the blocks again. Look like megalithic blocks. Towpath. In fitting with a reset-esque style. In April 1957, the State Department of Public Works finally condemned all towpath, spelled Towpath, but on here it's T.O. path. Towpath land for the proposed Niagara Thruway, of course. Big business coming in. Although, not big business probably lobbying government, local government, I should say. Although much of the southern Erie Canal had already been filled, settlements such as the Marsh, the area between Riverside Park and Sheridan Drive, persisted. It was so stable that residents held honorary mayoral elections at Frank Mutz's Tavern. The condemnation order was received as total betrayal. Now let's go and look at that area on these maps here, because I have a very interesting. I've gone over this previously. Now the area that they're talking about is where, effectively near where I am. Now there's Squaw Island, and this map is 1902, Buffalo, I believe. We've seen this in the actual clip. I believe this is a 1902 map. There you go. Copyrighted 1902. And it was just talking about the Riverside Park area, and again, that's where I am. And we've established previously in a video that I did that the 190, this is all 190. And if you pay attention, there's Riverside Park. And right here, right at the foot of Briggs, Street, Briggs. There was it says a cataract power conduct, whatever that means. And I have an interesting video for you. Riverside Park. In fitting with boots on the ground, this is an 1888 picture that they have Buffalo Fairgrounds. It looks like the Pan American Express Fairgrounds, actually. We have a boots on the ground for you. Riverside Park. There you go. Now that's Strawberry Island right there. That's Canada. Okay, Niagara River. Right underneath here is the 190 where that canal would have been. Right underneath here. Strawberry Island. There goes the 190. Now that would have been the canal. That's all a canal. Back in that map. That's all a canal right here. Okay, and it has that power conduit by, I said that it takes a minute for this to load in, by the base of Brick Street, right? It's not just boots on the ground, it's tires on the asphalt. I'm right down the street from Riverside Park here, and there goes Coalition.
Wow.
It didn't cross my path. It was going to. I want to show you guys what there is here in this little, hopefully that map loads in. Okay, now you see that. Now where I am is right here, guys. Remember Riverside Park and that power conduit, or power conduct. Riverside Park is right here. Where I was at the base of Briggs. There goes Briggs. Now let's see if that map has loaded in. Yep. Oh no. Excuse me, sorry about that. Let's give it a second because I want to show you guys again that okay, here we go. Sorry about this, but it does take a minute for these to load in. I downloaded them so I don't have to get them offline all the time. Okay, so it says cataract power conduct. Okay, and I'll show you this building right here, which I believe is the one that I've done before. Alright, now that was the base of Briggs is right. No, not that one. Okay, you see Briggs, guys? Right here. Briggs. Now base of that is where they're saying the power conduct is, must have been a falls, maybe, because there's a lot of stuff going on here, and you have this creek, which might have been Cornelius Creek. I'll show that in a second. But see this building? I've done that before. That is this guy right here. I know it's a little bit off, but it's because those maps are panoramic and it's on a flat. This is a round scaffolding here, which isn't true, but it's what we have to work with. And that's where I was right there. Okay, this is where the power conduit would be at the foot of Briggs. And there is that lighthouse right here. And they say that it's obviously it's for the ships because this is the portion of the Erie Canal has moved from here, the 190, which I proved. And that map was formerly a canal. Right here, track this back. That's a canal. So number one, the 190 was a former canal. There's some kind of power cataract here at the base of Briggs. And does it have something to do with that tower? Because it's right now they say, and they've always told me that tower. My buddy lives near there. That it always has to, for ships to make sure that they know where land is, and I understand that. But when you take into consideration what's going on here and how they change everything around, makes you think differently about what this stuff is. And the power conduct, is there tunnels underneath here? I've posited that there were tunnels that from that pumping generation state where the earthworks is all the way out to Depew. The Depew map isn't working right now online, and I forgot I couldn't download it in time, so look what we have here. The towpath had been home to dozens of recreational organizations: the Oak Tree Fishing Club, Riverside Hunting and Fishing Club, Turkey Point Club, Parkside Wheeling Club, and the 1903 George Washington Fishing and Camping Club. That's right down the street from me. It's still there. Maintained clubhouses alongside and homes. As the bulldozers moved in, people struggled to salvage what they could. Yeah, because they look like bulldozers here. I'm not sure what's going on. Doesn't seem right. And then you have the workhorses. There go the blocks again. But the story of the Erie Canal is they had this canal and they were able to dredge it and do all this stuff. But horses had to pull. They were doing stuff like this, Legos with these huge blocks, seemingly, but the horses had to pull. You had stuff like this, huge blocks. Now, is this before or after? Before, after, before? Who knows? Completion of the barge canal system in 1918 rendered the former Erie Canal obsolete. Where the two canals diverged, the older thoroughfare, once choked the boats, was abandoned. I guess this is what this is. This 1926 view from the Commercial Street Bridge looks northwest towards the Evans Street Bridge. The hardware firm of Beals, McCarthy, Rogers, and its predecessors had occupied the building. Now this one says, during the 1920s and 30s, traces of the Erie Canal vanished from the landscape as abandoned sections were filled in. This photograph was taken from the spot where the Commercial Street once crossed the canal. Buildings on the left were part of infamous Canal Street District, whose story had been recorded in America's Crossroads, Michael Vogel. Now, is that saying it was filled in, or is this before? Doesn't give a date. So if they filled all this in, then it goes to show that they can backfill everything. Or do they dig it out? And this is what they may have dug out the mud flood with. Machines like this. Hewlett unloaders were the key to daily operations on the Lackawanna Steel. We're gonna go through all the industry pictures now. Steel plants, ore dock, for several decades. George M. Hewlett of Cleveland, the center of ore handling innovations, devised a unique machine in 1898, and it quickly became a familiar sight around the Great Lakes. In 1924, this 1924 photograph shows the Lackawanna Hewletts transferring iron ore from the vessel at the left to stockpiles of ore yard on the right. Or this could have been a tool used to dig out, lay tracks and dig out possible mud flood that seems to have flooded over the old world. A possible Moorish sector hub, huge megatropolis of old world here in Buffalo. You can begin to see how that can happen because look at, like I've pointed out before, it looks like this section of Niagara is terraformed just like that. And they said that they were using it for ore. But if you go, here goes the pumping station and that really anomalous feature there. But yeah, look at this here. The grading there. Okay. This thing just moves along and digs it out. And then leaves something looking like this. And then they say, oh, it's just iron ore. Maybe, So let's go take a look at these. This is the 1888. That's where I got that cover from.